I am Rock Lee, and you're listening to the Zane Man.
Oh, yes, Danhausen here, Danhausen. Listen to the Zan Man, or be cursed.
Tonight, I am Batman, and you're listening to the Zan Man.
Well, Mr. Zandman.
Ladies and gents, welcome to episode 4 of Zandom Thoughts, the podcast where we wonder, in this situation, if we are being unreasonable or not. Well, not all the time. I feel like for the most part, I'm a very reasonable person, but in this particular situation, I got mad over nothing, seemingly. Well, not nothing, but here, let me just explain it. And if at some point you come across this podcast, you email me, you can chat with me on social media, all those good things, let me know if I'm being unreasonable in this situation. But essentially, it starts off with me having to do a simple task. And for the sake of not throwing anybody under the bus, not putting anybody on blast, I'm going to keep the name to myself, but I'm going to say it's not my immediate family, and it's not like anyone that is related to me or anything. But there's essentially, in my life, a task that I partake in, I complete, and can be affected by the actions or lack of actions from someone who is in my immediate life. And regardless of whether they do their task that could affect my task, yeah, I'm trying to be as vague as possible. But them not doing their task isn't going to prevent me from doing my task. It's just going to make me doing my task a little bit more annoying. So, like, the other day I did this task. This person didn't do their part, so it made my task a little bit more difficult. But ultimately, I didn't say anything about it. I've never complained to this person when they didn't complete their task. It's just been it was a little bit annoying while I was going through it. It's just a small part, and I was like, oh man, I really wish this was done, and kept going on about my day. It wasn't a big deal. I don't feel like I treated it like a big deal. I don't think I sent any messages or anything. Like, I don't have to think about it. I didn't text this person. I didn't message them. I didn't yell. I didn't kick their door down and be like, hey, your task wasn't done. Nope, I just went about my day and did my task. Well, 5 or 6 hours go by. And this person sends me a text and says, oh, I was going to tell you to let me know when you were going to do the task so I could do my task. And I'm guessing they noticed that my task was completed. And I didn't really know how to reply to that because my task was already completed. It was just kind of to me, it just came off as oh, I'm being considerate and I don't want you to be mad at me. So, hey, just so you know, I thought about it. I thought about doing it. Like, my initial, I tried really hard. I didn't want to cause any problems or anything, and it wasn't worth being confrontational over. So I just sent a emoji where you're given the rock on fingers. But what I wanted to send was, but you didn't do it, did you? Like, it would probably just make more sense if you just did your task regularly so you didn't have to worry about it when I was about to do my task. Because it is a task you can upkeep with. And if you upkeep with the task, it's going to make it easier on yourself and everyone around you. But, like, I didn't know how to reply to it because, honestly, it was just kind of it wasn't like a, hey, man, sorry, I forgot to do this. It wasn't anything like that. It was just a, hey, I thought about doing it. Just so you know, I was going to tell you that. And then the him not doing the task didn't irritate me. It was that little, hey, I'm absolving myself of all wrongdoing. Just so you know, like, keep it to yourself. Unless I contact you about it, I don't care. It got done. It looks good. Everything came out the way it was supposed to be. So why the heck would you send that text? I don't know. Like, I am being unreasonable. It's not going to affect my day. I didn't, like, spend the rest of the day sulking and be like, how could he send me that text message or anything like that? But it is just one of those, I don't know where your mindset is at when you send that, because there's no purpose to it. You're just, like, you didn't do the thing. That's okay. Like, you're not gonna get credit for not doing the thing either. Like, I don't care that you thought about it. Just do the thing. We're adults. That's really what it comes down to. But whenever it first happened, I audibly made a noise. And I asked my wife, how the heck am I supposed to respond to this? Because it's stupid. So yeah, I'm unreasonable. But that kind of goes along with the theme of this podcast, because you're never going to really see too many intros like this where I'm complaining about somebody. It's an obscure intro, and this podcast is going to be fuel. My dyslexia just triggered itself. It's going to be full of obscure things as we go into history, as we go into all sorts of things, and we find the things that are interesting, but are obscure stories, are obscure historical figures that no one really talks about, and we're going to bring them out into the light. And I already shared a couple of these with my wife. I enjoyed her reactions, and so I'm excited to get started and really explore this topic. It's going to be a good episode, I really feel like, because we have, for the first time in 4 episodes, we're going to be doing a MIRAR, which I think we're going to change what MIRAR is, because it's movies in review and ranked, which ultimately it explains what it is, but it's not really grammatically correct. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to change it to movie is reviewed and ranked, because that is just kind of a description in the name. And essentially, if you don't know what that is, what we do is we watch movies that we've never seen before. It could be from this year. It could be from 1992. It could be from the 1970s. Could be from the mid-2000s. You get it. It could be from any time frame. I've never seen it, and then I'm going to review the movie here on the podcast, and we're going to rank them. Well, up to this point, we haven't done any movies yet, and I'm proud to say that at the end of this episode, we will be reviewing our first movie, and I'm excited. You can probably see what it is in the show notes, but I'm not going to spoil it right here. I wouldn't do that. Instead, we are going to peel back the curtain into obscurity. Join me, won't you? That's right, ladies and gents. We know all of the big pieces of history. World War I, World War II, the Declaration of Independence. All of those events have the spotlight. But in between all of the big events in history that we call textbook worthy, there are plenty of entertaining events that happen on a pretty regular basis. So much so that I had to cut down on the list I originally came into this episode with. Otherwise, it would have been like a 4-hour episode. So we can definitely do more of these if you guys find it entertaining. But yeah, let's just plunge straight into it. And the first event we are going to talk about is a riot, which seems very timely in the world we live in today. I'm looking at you, California. But this one did not happen in California. It actually happened on the other side of the country in New York City, and it is known as the Straw Hat Riot. The Straw Hat Riot of 1922, that should date it a little bit, was a riot that occurred in New York City at the end of summer. As a result of unwritten rules, that's already a no-no, ladies and gents. You can't impose unwritten rules. Although you can. There's a lot of good unwritten. I take it back. In men's fashion. Oh, unwritten rules in men's fashion at the time. Okay, you lost me. Yes, I have read this before. And it's just as ridiculous as the first time I read it. So yes, I read that correctly. It's a riot that occurred as a result of unwritten rules in men's fashion at the time, and a tradition of taunting people who had failed to stop wearing straw hats after autumn began. Come on, man, it's autumn. Stop wearing that straw hat. They wouldn't like Monkey D. Luffy from One Piece. Originating as a series of minor riots. Think about that for a second. It spread due to men wearing straw hats past the unofficial date that was deemed socially acceptable, known as September 15th. It's coming up quick, ladies and gents. You don't want to wear straw hats past that time. It lasted 8 days. 8 days over people not wearing straw hats in time, leading to many arrests and some injuries. So we're off to a good start. We're about to get more detailed, but ladies and gents, that is just what to expect on this list of ridiculousness. By the early 20th century, straw boaters were considered acceptable day attire in North America cities at the height of summer, even for businessmen. But there was an unwritten rule that one was not supposed to wear a straw hat past September 15th, which was known as Felt Hat Day. It was socially acceptable for stockbrokers to destroy each other's hats due to the fact that they were, quote-unquote companions, but it was not acceptable for total strangers. If any man was seen wearing a straw hat, he was, at minimum, subjecting himself to ridicule, and it was a tradition for youths, young men, to knock straw hats off of wearers' heads and stomp on them, dude. I can't even imagine seeing this trend happen in real life in the world today. Like, with some of the things that riots break out for, I can believe this starting a riot today. It's kind of crazy. This tradition became well established, and newspapers of the day would often warn people of the impending approach of the 15th. Beware! When men would have to switch to felt or silk hats like non-savages. Friggin' savage, take that straw hat off or I'm gonna stomp on it, dude. I couldn't even imagine. Hat bashing was only socially acceptable after September 15th, but there were multiple occasions leading up to this date where the police had to intervene and stop these darn teenagers from doing it early. The riot itself began on September 13th. Oh, you young sluggers. You jumped the gun. You couldn't wait an extra 2 days to stomp on their boaters. 2 days before the supposed unspoken date, when a group of youths decided to get an early jump on the tradition. This group began in the former Mulberry Bend area of Manhattan by removing and stomping hats worn by factory workers, who were employed in the area. The more innocuous stomping turned into a brawl when the youths tried to stomp a group of dock workers. Oh no, you can't mess with the dock workers. And the dock workers fought back. Dude, I'm surprised not more people didn't fight back. Like, even if it was September 18th, somebody stomped on my hat, you're getting your jaw rocked. It's going to be so ridiculous because I'll bend down on one knee to be like, oh no, my hat. And then they approach and they're like, aha, you and your straw hat. They get a little too close. That's going to be a wicked uppercut because I'm coming straight up, bro. Your jaw is going to be in your nose. It's going to look like a Looney Tunes character. The brawl soon stopped traffic, holy cow, on the Manhattan Bridge and was eventually broken up by police, leading to some arrests. Although the initial brawl was broken up by police, the fights continued to escalate in the next evening. Gangs of teenagers, darn teenagers. I'm just picturing West Side Story where like a group of like 20 kids are snapping and walking towards you. On the other side, it's full grown adults. They have one hat on their straw hats to hold them in place and they're just marching forward. It's a beautiful scene. Gangs of teenagers prowled the streets wielding large sticks. Sometimes with a nail driven through the top for hooking hats. Dude, that's going to lead to a death or two. Looking for pedestrians wearing straw hats and beating those who resist. Stop resisting, old man. Let us take your boater. One man claimed that his hat was taken. One man claimed that his hat was taken, and the group who had taken his hat joined a mob of about 1,000 that was snatching hats along the Amsterdam Avenue. Holy cow, thousands of teenagers were doing this. Several men were hospitalized from the beatings they received after resisting having their hats taken, and many arrests were made. Dude, yeah, no, I was like thinking like 20 teenagers, and I was like, we could probably have a good fight. But you're just like 3 guys walking down the street. You just happen to be wearing a straw hat. You look up and there's just a mob of like people with sticks with nails on the end. And they're like, it's for hooking hats. Shoves it in your side. Ow, it's for hooking hats. Stabs you to death. It's for hooking hats. I'm not a freaking hat. Falls down to knees. Police were slow to respond to the riots, clearly, although several off-duty police officers found themselves caught in the brawl when rioters attempted to snatch their hats, too. Straw hats weren't enough. We want your old-fashioned policeman. I'm just picturing those bucket hat-looking ones. 2 or 3 boys were accosted by pedestrians who said that their straw hats had been smashed. Those boys were arrested. In one incident, a group of boys armed with sticks attacked people near 109th Street. Thank goodness it wasn't 110th Street. 7 youths brought to East 104th Street. I'm not going to read the street names all the time because it's like 104th. And my dad joke, okay. So whenever we were driving from Missouri to Wisconsin, whenever me and my wife were dating, every single time we were in the car together, there was this part in Iowa where we would be passing 104th Street, 105th Street, 106th Street. And me being my moronic self, every single time it'd be like 104th Street. I can't wait till we get to 105th Street. Get to 105th Street. Oh boy, 106th Street's going to be even better. And my poor wife had to deal with that. After the station dealt with the original riot, all stations were told to keep an eye out for hat-snatching teenagers. That is the epidemic. If only that was the epidemic we had in the world today. He stole my hat! Get sniped. One victim, Harry Gerber, was kicked so badly he had to be hospitalized. That the activity died out is probably connected with the disappearance of the tradition of seasonal switch from straw to felt hats. While Panama hats remained in fashion, oh thank goodness for Panama hats, the straw boater became less fashionable. And that's the end of the article. So ladies and gents, it's a real thing. In 1920s, there was literally like a gang war over people who were like, we should have the right to wear straw hats, and people who were like, it's lame. But on this list, that's not the only time that a simple object led to a huge mass hysteria type event. I'm talking about the title of this podcast, ladies and gents. We are going to China for this next one, for the cult of mango. And I should say up front that these excerpts of what I'm about to read are taken from a BBC article called China's Curious Cult of Mango. In case you want to read it, I mean, it's from an article back in 2016. So if there's any, 50 years ago, keep that in mind, because I thought I saw a couple of those in this article. Either way, in 1966, Chairman Mao had called on the student Red Guards to rebel against reactionary authorities. His aim was to reshape society by purging it of Borgias elements and traditional ways of thinking. But by the summer of 1968, the country had become engulfed in fighting as Red Guard factions competed for power. That sounds like a video game, dude. To quell the forces that he had unleashed, Mao sent 30,000 workers to Tsinghua University in Beijing, armed only with their talisman in the Little Red Book. Just 30,000 men marching to war, and they all just have a little talisman on a string. And they're gonna be so jealous, they'll have no choice but to run away and surrender. The students attacked them with spears and sulfuric acid. Okay, they have a little bit more than talismans. Killing 5 and injuring more than 700 before finally surrendering. Mao thanked the workers with a gift of approximately 40 mangoes, which he had been given the previous day by Pakistan's foreign minister. These mangoes had a huge impact. No one in northern China at that point had known what mangoes were, so the workers stayed up all night looking at them, smelling them, caressing them, wondering what this magical fruit was, says historian Frida Merck. At the same time, they had received a high directive from Chairman Mao saying that henceforth, the working class must exercise leadership in everything. It was very exciting to be given this kind of recognition at that time. This power shift from the zealous students to the workers and peasants offered respite from the anarchy. Some people in Beijing told me that they perceived that Mao had intervened in the chaotic random violence and that the mangoes symbolized the end of cultural revolution, says Merck. Zhang Kui, a worker who occupied Tsinghua, says the arrival of one of Mao's mangoes at his workplace prompted intense debate. The military representative came into our factory with the mango raised in both hands. We discussed what to do with it, whether to split it among us or eat it, or even preserve it. We decided to preserve it, he says. We found a hospital that put it in formaldehyde. We made it a specimen. That was the first decision. The second decision was to make wax mangoes. Wax mangoes each with a glass cover. After we made the wax replicas, we gave one each to the revolutionary workers. Workers were expected to hold the sacred fruit solemnly and reverently, and were admonished if they failed to do so. Dang. You're not in the club anymore. Wang Xiaoping, an employee at Beijing No. 1 machine tool plant, received a wax replica. The fruit itself was destined for higher things. The real mango was driven by a worker representative through a procession of beating drums and people lining the streets from the factory to the airport, says Wang. So essentially the real fruit was being worshipped. That's really what we have here. The workers had chartered a plane to fly a single mango to a factory in Shanghai. When one of the mangoes began to rot, workers peeled it and boiled the flesh in a vat of water, which then became holy. Each worker sipped a spoonful. Mao is said to have chuckled on hearing this particular detail. Here's their mangoes. Thank you, Chairman Mao. He comes back 5 minutes later. They're worshiping the fruit, Chairman Mao. Good. That's just what I picture. From the very beginning, the mango gift took on a relic-like quality, to be revered and even worshipped. I was right, said Cambridge University lecturer Adam Hewitt-Chow. Not only was the mango a gift from the chairman, it was the chairman. Ooh. The association is reflected in a poem from that period. Seeing that golden mango was as if seeing the great leader Chairman Mao. Standing before that golden mango was just like standing beside Chairman Mao. Again and again touching that golden mango. The golden mango was so warm. Again and again smelling the mango. The golden mango was so fragrant. That's the poem. The mangoes toured the length and breadth of the country and were hosted in a series of sacred processions. Red Guards had wrecked temples and shrines, but destroying artifacts is easier than erasing religious behavior, and soon the mangoes became the object of intense devotion. Some rituals imitated centuries of Buddhist and Taoist traditions, and the mangoes were even placed on an altar to which factory workers would bow as they passed. China has a long history of symbolic associations with food, which may have encouraged extravagant interpretations of Mao's gift. The mangoes were compared to mushrooms of immortality and longevity peach of Chinese mythology. The workers surmised that Mao's gift was an act of selflessness, in which he had sacrificed his longevity for theirs. Nah, dude, this is essentially like people, these guys went to war for him, essentially. And for their efforts, they get a pizza party, and they're worshiping the pizza. That's what this is. The pizza was so fragrant. The pizza was warm to the touch. I bow to the pizza. That's essentially what this is. It really is. Little did they know that he disliked fruit. So he was like, oh, I received this gift of mangoes. I don't really want it. Give it to those kids. Nor were they concerned to learn that Mao was simply passing a gift he had already received. Exactly, that's what I'm saying. There is a tradition in China of xuansheng, or regifting. It may be regarded as vulgar in the West, but in China, regifting is widely seen as a compliment, enhancing the status of both the giver and the recipient. The mangoes also proved to be a gift to the propaganda department of the Communist Party, which quickly manufactured mango-themed household items such as, come now, get your mango bed sheets, mango vanity stands, mango enamel trays, and mango wash basins, as well as mango-scented soap and mango-flavored cigarettes. Ooh, I'm not a smoker, but dude. Massive papier-mâché mangoes appeared on the central float during the National Day Parade in Beijing on October 1968. Far away in the Guizhou province, thousands of armed peasants fought over black and white photocopy of a mango. Dude, no, hey. When the internet first surfaced and I was born in 1990s, pictures ruled the world. Like Pogs, they're these little cardboard circles with pictures of cartoon characters and stuff on them. They were valuable. People wanted them. They were collector's items. Pokemon cards are essentially just pictures. They're more than that. They're essentially just pictures. Pictures are valuable things, so I don't doubt that, especially in the early days before photocopies were hard to come by. But not everybody was so enthusiastic about the fruit. The artist Zhang Hangtu told me of his skepticism. When the mango story was published in the newspaper, I thought it was funny, stupid, ridiculous. I never had a mango, but I knew it was a fruit, and any fruit will rot. Those who expressed their doubts, however, were severely punished. A village dentist was publicly humiliated and then executed after comparing a touring mango to a sweet potato. Just a glorified sweet potato. Get him! Just kill him, throw tomatoes at him, and then cut his head off. That's what I'm picturing. Holy cow. Executed for talking about the mango. You can't talk about my mango. Not my mango. The mango fever fizzled out after 18 months and soon discarded wax replicas were being used as candles during electric outages. On a visit to Beijing in 1974, Imelda Marcos took a case of Philippine national fruit mangoes as a gift for her hosts. Mao's wife, Jian Qing, known as Madame Mao in the West, tried to replicate the earlier enthusiasm, sending the mangoes to the workers. They dutifully held a ceremony to give thanks, but Jiang Qing lacked her husband's sense of political timing. The following year, as Mao lay ill and with no clear successor in sight, she commissioned a new film, The Song of the Mango, to enhance her credibility. But within a week of its release, Jiang was arrested and the film was taken out of circulation. It was the final chapter in the mango story. Now mangoes are a common fruit in Beijing, and Wang Xiaoping can buy golden mango juice wherever she likes. The mystery of the mango is gone, she tells me. It's no longer a sacred icon as it was before. It's become another consumer good. Young people don't know the history, but for those who lived through it, every time you think of mangoes, your heart has a special feeling. Mao, like the mangoes he gave the workers, now lies preserved in wax in a crystal glass case. Historians have tended to regard the mango craze as a bizarre fad, but it is one of the few occasions when culture was created spontaneously from the bottom up, initiated and interpreted by the workers. During a period of great cruelty, the mangoes represented a people, an emblem of peace and generosity. They wanted peace and generosity. If you don't like my mango, I'll cut your head off. It represents peace and generosity. It's ironic. That's like the people who are like, I'm all for love until you disagree with what I believe. I'll just shut up before I get in trouble. They wanted to believe the promise written on the enamel trays. With each mango, profound kindness follows. I tell you what, that makes me want to go get a 3 or 4 monster mango flavored real bad. I'm going to freak. Every time I sip on one of those, I'm going to be like, it's an honor. You can't drink energy drinks. They're bad for you. I'm drinking for peace, dang it. You listen to me. But that was the most intriguing story, and it makes me want to find a fruit. The humble pineapple represents gentleness. I better stop before I get humiliated in public and executed. This next one is a very quick one. It's a single paragraph, and not even. It's just a couple sentences. And it's known as the tragedy of Aeschylus. Aeschylus, essentially, going into this, is a Greek writer, philosopher. He always wrote various plays and stuff, which at the time in 456 BC was a big deal because that's the big form of entertainment rather than going to movie theaters because they didn't exist, or all sorts of other things, watching TV. Everybody went to plays and stuff like that. Well, he wrote a bunch of the well-known tragedy ones. He didn't write happy stories. He wrote bad stories. And his death was almost symbolic of that. Aeschylus was an ancient Greek tragedian, often described as the father of tragedy. In 458 BC, A returned to Sicily for the last time, visiting the city of Gela, when he died in 456 or 455 BC. Valerius Maximus wrote that he was killed outside the city by a tortoise that was dropped by an eagle. The eagle had mistaken his head for a rock that was suitable for shattering the shell, which killed him. The eagle was just trying to get by, dude. He didn't mean anything by it. He's like, man, I'm hungry, and this turtle's being real difficult and stuff. Oh, there's a rock right there. End of Aeschylus. Bless his heart. That is such a poetic, tragedian, whatever you want to call it, way to go. It produces much laughter, one could say, which is fitting for this next one because it's called the... I need to figure out ways to pronounce this. Tanganyika laughter epidemic. The Tanganyika laughter epidemic of 1962 was a mass outbreak of hysteria and mass psychological illness, rumored to have occurred in or near village of Kashasha, on the western coast of Lake Victoria in Tanganyika. So pretty much a ridiculous amount of people all just started laughing and no one could figure out the reason for it. So they were just like, they're going mad. Allow me to elaborate. The laughter epidemic began on January 30th, 1962 at a mission-run boarding school for the girls of Kashasha. It started with 3 girls and spread throughout the school, affecting 95 of the 159 pupils that were aged between 12 and 18. Symptoms lasted from hours all the way till 16 days, often averaging per person around 7 days. So they just laughed nonstop for 7 days. The teaching staff were unaffected and reported that students were unable to concentrate on their lessons. The first outbreak in Kashasha lasted roughly 48 days. The school was forced to close on March 18th, 1962. Just imagine you're in the middle of teaching. You're like, man, I feel like I'm teaching really good today. Then one of the kids, Veronica, why are you laughing? Girl next to her, ha ha. Before you know it, your entire class of like 30 people are all just laughing at you. The scene from Carrie plays in your head. They're all gonna laugh at you. It just zooms in on your face. You're like, my gosh, she was right. Jump out the window. When it reopened on May 21st, a second phase of the outbreak affected an additional 57 pupils. The all-girl boarding school reclosed at the end of June. The epidemic spread from Nshamba in the Mubwela district, a village 55 miles west of Bukoba, where several of the girls actually lived. So they traveled from this place to the school and had spread whatever was causing the laugh to that area. So that's why a lot of people call it the sickness, because they thinking it's a sickness that was actually transmitted, leading to a mental breakdown, which is why they were laughing. In April and May 1962, 217 mostly young villagers had laughing attacks over the course of 34 days. The Kashasha school was sued for allowing the children and their parents to transmit it to surrounding areas. It's like the Joker gas. Whenever he sprays people with gas and they laugh until they die, that's kind of what this is. Is this where it was like the inspiration for that? I would like to know. In June, the laughing epidemic spread to Ramshinra's girls' middle school, affecting 48 girls from there. Additionally, schools in the Tanganyika village were also affected to some degree. The phenomena died off 18 months after it started. All areas affected within a 100-mile radius of Bukoba. In all, 14 schools were shut down and 1,000 people or more were affected. Symptoms of the Tanganyika laughter epidemic included laughter and crying, besides general restlessness and pain, as well as fainting, respiratory problems, and rashes. Well, yeah, the diaphragm's probably suffering some huge abuse from nonstop laughing. I know there's a show called 1,000 Ways to Die, and there was somebody who laughed themselves to death, but it was a laugh nonstop that triggered something else inside the diaphragm, which caused a tear or something, and they bled out. So I couldn't find if anybody died from this, I don't think. I feel like it would have said fatal at some point throughout this if anybody died. So it was just people going crazy. Many of the symptoms experienced were stress-induced due to various external factors. The stress and anxiety that provoked mass hysteria outbreaks are reactions to perceived threats, cultural transitions, instances of uncertainty, and social stressors. Due to the majority of the population affected by this epidemic being young and adolescent children, the outbreak has attributed to the young not having appropriate coping skills to manage such stresses and anxieties. Coinciding with this, adolescents have a need for acceptance and are eager to blend into a group, making them vulnerable to influence and contagion. This could be just one of those weird moments where it's like, I don't know, almost like a placebo type thing, because I do kind of agree with that, especially with kids between 12 and 18 whenever they're trying to find themselves, man, and they're just trying to fit in, and 30 of your classmates are laughing, and you're like, I'm crazy too, the Joker got me too, ha ha ha! You're like, or like whenever you give somebody a cup and you're like, it's very strong wine, they drink 3 cups and now all of a sudden they're acting tipsy. But there was never any alcohol in it, so they just drank grape juice and now they're acting drunk. I think this is kind of a similar thing for a lot of people, but I do think at least like a dozen of them had to be for real, just like not going. I don't know. It's definitely a weird thing, so it definitely makes the list and everything. But as we will come to find in the very next one, it's not the only time a group of people all joined together in a plague-like event. That one wasn't really a plague-like event. It's just called an epidemic because, they had to get out of there. But what if I told you not only has there been an epidemic of the laugh, there has been an epidemic of the dance. This one was a little bit earlier, though. It's called the Dancing Plague of 1518. The Dancing Plague of 1518 was a case of dancing mania that occurred in Strasbourg, Alsace, also known as modern-day France, in the Holy Roman Empire from July 1518 to September 1518. That's like 2 months, isn't it? July, August, September. Yep. Somewhere between 50 and 400 people took to dancing for weeks, dude. Cardio. They just must be in such great condition after that. Ready for 5 rounds in the UFC championship match, let me tell you. There are many theories behind the phenomena, the most popular being stress-induced mass hysteria. Where have I heard that before? The outbreak began July 1518 when a woman known as Frau Trophia began to dance fervently to control What's wrong, Frau? Why are you shaking your hips? I gotta dance! He just starts convulsing, dancing. According to Ned Pennant Rea, Frau Trophia had started dancing on July 14th, so close, 6 days away from my birthday, on the narrow cobbled street outside her half-timbered home. As far as we could tell, she had no musical accompaniment, but simply began to dance. Dude, sometimes it be like that. You don't need external music. I dance at work to music I think is playing in my head. I'm not crazy. Some of those people who had witnessed her strange performance had simply begun to mimic her, and within days, more than 30 choreographs were in motion. Yeah, this is... If you've ever seen the movie Forrest Gump, whenever he just decides to start running, this is very much that, where people are like, wow, I'm going to run too. And then one day, Frau just turned around and was like, I don't feel like dancing no more. And they all stopped. It's like, well, since she's not doing it, it's not cool anymore. Trophia kept up the constant dancing for a week. Soon, 36 others joined in. This is known and believed by some to be a perfect example of the nocebo effect, which can often make some feel ill simply by being under the expectation of being ill, which is, like I said earlier, the drunken example I gave. By August, the dancing plague had claimed 400 victims. Dancers were beginning to collapse. It is said some even died of a stroke. So this one was actually lethal. We didn't even hear anything about that of the laughing. Not even a torn diaphragm. But here the people are just like, I can't dance no more. Bleh. Dead. The victims' movements were described as spasmodic, so they're just seizing almost. Dang. With many convulsions, and their bodies were left drenched in sweat. Well, I'll bet you're going through cardio workout number 5. Isn't there like a Zumba or something like that? There's like a DVD set out there of you can dance to lose that weight. Like that sort of thing. Their arms would thrash violently, and some noted that their eyes were vacant and expressionless. They're zombies, dude, let me tell you. Episode 2 of the Zandman pod. My gosh, I'm dying of Zandom thoughts. Blood would pool in their swollen feet, and they would eventually bleed into their shoes. That sounds tasty. Often there would also be cries for help from the affected. If the victim did not succumb to a heart attack, they would collapse from extreme exhaustion, hunger, and thirst. Come inside and eat your spaghetti. I can't, I gotta dance. 5 days later, I'm so hungry. Blah, dead. There were as many as 15 deaths per day. Holy cow, during the outbreak's peak, but the final number of fatalities is unknown today. No one knew what caused this reaction, which meant no one understood how to remedy it. By early September, the outbreak began to subside. Historical documents, including physician notes, cathedral sermons, and local regional chronicles, even noted notes issued by the Strasbourg City Council, are clear that the victims danced, and it is not known why. There was more explanations of like people being like, oh, the reason why they're dancing is they're a bunch of sinners and stuff like that. And I'm going to skip over that real quick. Remaining dancers were taken to a mountaintop for praying for absolution. Hey, maybe they were just dancing like David. David dancing, people thought he was crazy. Maybe they were just dancing like David. All I'm saying. And it's not known why they were dancing. Maybe they were dancing for a divine intervention. Faith. Ye with little faith. Events similar to this have occurred through the medieval age, including in Italy, a woman was bitten by a tarantula, the venom making her dance convulsively. Well, that's not really dancing. The only way to cure the bite was to shimmy and to have the right sort of music available. The tarantula poison's gonna kill me. Unless you got that Metallica on repeat, son. Master. Other explanations are demonic possession. Controversy exists over whether people ultimately actually danced, quote unquote, to death. Some sources claim that a period of the plague killed around 15 people per day, but the sources of the city of Strasbourg themselves at the time of events did not mention the number of deaths, and even if there were any fatalities at all. See, so I think this is like the laughter epidemic, where I guarantee you it was like they heard of the laughing epidemic and these events had already gone down 200 years earlier, and they were like, no, we had deaths though, so we're worse than the laughter epidemic. Like somebody made it up so that they could save face. I don't know, man. I don't know. Either way, though, we got 2 more left, and they are animal related. So if you like animals, it might not be for you. I mean, I don't know. Let's see. The first one's known as Project Pigeon, in which it's a project in which I can't remember who it was. We'll read it here in a second. But essentially, military personnel were trying to develop a missile that was led by a pigeon. Pigeon-led missiles. The testbed was the same from the National Bureau of Standards, developed underpowered airframe that they later used for the U.S. Navy's radar-guided bat glide bomb, which was basically a small glider with wings and tail surfaces, an explosive warhead section in the center, and a guidance section on the nose cone. So just picture somebody drops an explosive, and a wing glider pops out the back, and it slowly glides over to its target and explodes. That's kind of what the bat glide bomb was. The intent was to train pigeons, yes, real-life pigeons, not a little glider, to act as pilots for a device, using their cognitive abilities to recognize a target. The guidance system consisted of 3 lenses mounted on the nose. I'm just picturing, like, we got to do everything we can to help this pigeon's vision, and he's going to guide it. My goodness, Godspeed, Admiral. I don't even know what a pigeon name would be in the Army, but that's what I'm picturing. The guidance system consisted of 3 lenses mounted on the nose of the vehicle, which projected an image of the target on a screen mounted in a small compartment inside the nose cone. Oh, they even get a nose cone. This screen was mounted on pivots and fitted with sensors that measured any angular movement. 1 to 3 pigeons trained by operant conditioning to recognize the target were stationed in the front of the screen. When they saw the target, they would peck at the screen with their beaks, and they were trained by being shown an image of the target, and gradually more and more rapid pecks were required for the grain of food. Oh, so they're not actually training. Whatever. You know what? It is technically training, but I don't accept it. Not my pigeon training. As long as the target remained in the center of the screen, that screen would not move. So essentially it was a touch screen, but pigeons were in charge of, doing the targeting thing. And they were like, oh, there's Adolf Hitler right there. Peck at Adolf Hitler and we'll blow him up. That sort of thing. Based on where they tap, that's where the engine propels the bomb to go. As long as the target remained in the center of the screen would not move, but if the bomb began to go off track, the image would move towards the edge of the screen. The pigeons would follow the image, pecking at it. Yeah, so it was like a touch screen. Skinner noted that at least 2 of the birds would be in agreement, and the third bird would be punished for his minority option to encourage it to steer towards. So animal cruelty. Skinner was the guy running the operation. The sensors would detect the movement and send signals to the control surfaces, which would steer the bomb in the direction the screen they had moved. As the bomb swung back towards the target, the pigeons would again follow the image, bringing the screen back towards the centered position. In that way, the pigeons would correct any deviations from the course and keep the bomb on its glide path. Yeah, but what happens? Because if pigeons are as smart as we think they are, because I know, like, crows are the smartest bird out there. They remember faces. They can have problem-solving stuff, all sorts of good stuff like that. I'm not going to go into it, and I know I just said the word stuff, so it makes it sound less intelligent. but they're very smart. They're very intelligent. And pigeons are like a couple steps down from that, but they're intelligent too. So if somebody they're training rubs them the wrong way and they remember the face and they know that whoever they steer it towards is going to go boom, boom, there's a chance that they could friendly fire and kill their own people. So that's already enough of a reason not to, utilize them to essentially be a suicide bomber. Early electronic guidance systems used a similar method, only with electronic signals and processors replacing the birds in detecting the target and preventing deviation from the glide path. The National Defense Research Committee saw the idea to use pigeons and glide bombs as a very eccentric and impractical, but still contributed $25,000 to research. We're not doing that. Keep looking into it. Skinner, who had some success with the training, complained, "Our problem was no one would take us seriously." The program was canceled on the 8th of October, 1944, because the military believed that further prosecution of this project would seriously delay others within minds of the division, and they have more immediate promise of combat application. Project Pigeon was briefly revived in the Navy in 1948 under Project Orcon, but it was again canceled in 1953 when reliability of electronic guided systems was proven. Or, those pigeons just are like, Brent over there didn't feed me for days to get me ready for this project. I think I'm going to go blow up Brent. And sometimes that's all it takes, man. But although this project told us that birds aren't the solution, another situation entirely would suggest that birds are a problem. The last one on this list is called the Emu War, the Great Emu War in other circumstances. The Great Emu War was a nuisance wildlife management, too many words in a row, operation undertaken in Australia over the later part of 1932 to address public concern over the number of emus, large flightless birds indigenous to Australia, said to have been destroying crops in Campion district within wheat belt of the Western Australia front. Following World War I, large numbers of discharged veterans who served in the war were given land by the Australian government to take up farming within the Western Australia, often agriculturally marginal areas. With the onset of the Great Depression in 1929, these farmers were encouraged to increase their wheat crops, with the government promising and failing to deliver assistance from form of subsidies. Because of the recommendations and the promised subsidies, wheat prices continued to fall by October 1932. The farmers' difficulties were worsened by the arrival of approximately 20,000 emus. That's 4 zeros following the 2, ladies and gents. Emus regularly migrate after their breeding season, heading to the coast from inland regions. With the cleared land and additional water supplies being made available for livestock by the Western Australian farmers, the emus found that cultivated lands were a good habitat, and they began to foray into the farm territory. I mean, hey, whenever you're walking down the street and somebody just goes out and they're like, I'm going to just put this stack of hamburgers over here, it's going to be very hard for us humans to not walk over and be like, I'm going to take one of these hamburgers. These emus are just taking care of a good deal, and they're about to get punished for it. The emus consumed and spoiled the crops and left large gaps in the fences where rabbits could also enter and cause further problems. Farmers relayed their concerns about the birds ravaging their crops, and deputation of ex-soldiers were sent to meet with the Minister of Defense, Sir George Pierce. Having served in World War I, the soldier settlers were well aware of the effectiveness of machine guns, and they requested their deployment. The minister readily agreed, although with conditions attached. The guns were to be used by military personnel, troop transport was to be financed by the Western Australian government, and farmers would provide food, accommodation, and payment for ammunition. Pierce also supported the deployment on the grounds that birds would make good target practice. While it has been argued that some in the government may have viewed the operation as a way of being seen to be helping the Western Australian farmers, as well as stave off brewing secession movement. Yeah, that was the end of a sentence. I don't know why I was going to do a run-on. Military involvement was due to begin in 1932 in October. The war was conducted under the operation was delayed for a period by rainfall that caused the emus to scatter over a wider area. This rain ceased by the 2nd of November, whereupon the troops were deployed with orders to assist farmers and, according to the newspaper account, collect 100 emu skins so that their feathers could be used to make hats for light horsemen. Oh. There was multiple attempts on this. The first attempt was the 2nd of November, as just mentioned. The men traveled to Campion, where some 50 emu birds were sighted. As the birds were out of range with the guns, the local settlers attempted to herd the emus into an ambush, but the birds split into small groups and ran so that they were difficult to target. Nevertheless, while the first fusillade of machine guns was ineffective due to range, the second round of gunfire was able to kill a number. It just has a number in quotes of birds. Later the same day, a small flock was encountered and perhaps a dozen birds, in quotes, were killed. The next significant event was on the 4th of November. Meredith had established an ambush near a local dam where more than 1,000 emus were spotted. That's a significant... I just want to say, killed a dozen, killed about 50. There's 1,000. They're doing this big operation. There's 20,000. You're not even scratching the surface yet. Waste of time, if you ask me. This time, the gunners waited until the birds were in close proximity before opening fire. The gun jammed after only 12 birds were killed. This is an act of God. He doesn't want these emus to die. And the remainder scattered before any could be shot. No more birds were sighted that day. Oh, 20,000 and you can't find any of them? You guys just suck. This was like 1920s, though. Those idiots. In the days that followed, Meredith chose to move closer south. I don't say idiots lightly. I know there were a lot of people smarter than me in the 1920s, but they're closer to cavemen than I was. Yeah. Meredith chose to move further south where the birds were reported to be fairly more tame. But there was only a limited success despite his efforts. By the 4th day of the campaign, army observers noted that each pack seems to have its own leader. A big black-plumed bird which stands 6 feet high and keeps watch while his mates carry out their work of destruction and warns them of our approach. Hey, man, emus probably are smarter than you think they are, and you might just suck. At one stage, Meredith even went so far as to mount one of the guns on a truck and move that proved to be ineffective, as the truck was unable to gain on the birds, and the ride was so rough that the governor is what I keep wanting to say. The gunner was unable to fire any shots. By the 8th of November, 6 days after the first engagement, 2,500 rounds of ammunition had been fired. The number of birds that was killed was uncertain, but one account estimates that it was like 50 birds. So that's terrible. Terrible. That's like me going out there and firing, and I fired a gun on... The amount of times I fired a gun, I can count on my hands, and I would have probably been just as successful as these guys were. Alex, you're not that good. This was very deductive circles. You ever fired while attached to it? I don't know. I just feel like you guys... I don't know. This is definitely a sitting on the sidelines and being like you watch a professional football player, and you're like, come on, just throw the ball. Meanwhile, he's got like 500-pound linebackers crushing him. Oh, come on, man. You're not worth that much money if you can't even make that throw. This is totally one of those moments, but I feel like they should have got more birds than that. I feel like. The next line just throws us way off. The number of birds that is killed is uncertain. One account estimates that it was 50 birds, but other accounts range from 200 to 500. Somebody's lying. What the heck? They did a terrible job of tracking this. Meredith's official report noted that his men had suffered no casualties except for their dignity. I'll bet. It doesn't sound like you were put in any dangerous situations. You're just firing on groups of birds. I want to believe that they got closer to 200 or 500, but it's funnier to think they only got 50. So I'm going to go with that. On the 8th of November, members of the Australian House of Representatives discussed the operation. Following the negative coverage of the event from local media, which included claims that only a few emus had died, which that's true if it's only 50 out of 20,000, that is only a few. Pierce withdrew military personnel and the guns on the 8th of November. That's the first attempt. They had one more chance at this in the second attempt. After the withdrawal of the military, the emu attacks on crops continued. Well, duh, it's like they only got 50. Yes, what a bunch of losers. Farmers again asked for support, citing the hot weather and drought that brought emus invading farms in the thousands. So yeah, there's like over 20,000 migrated, right? I'm probably looking at this wrong. It's probably like 20,000 emus came in, but only like 5,000 came in the farmland. Still. At the same time, a report from the base commander was issued that indicated 300 emus had been killed in the initial operation altogether. Man, it does not sound like 50, 200, 500, 300. You probably killed one. You guys suck. Like, at this point, I'm going to paint my own agenda because you guys don't have a definitive number. That's kind of annoying. Acting on the requests in the base commander's report by the 12th of November, Minister of Defense approved a resumption of military efforts. He defended the decision in the Senate, explaining why the soldiers were necessary to combat a serious agricultural threat of the large emu population. Although the military had agreed to lend the guns to the Western Australian government on the expectation that they would provide the necessary people, Meredith was once again placed in the field due to an apparent lack of experienced gunners in the state. Clearly a lack of experienced gunners. Like, shoots off 2,500 rounds, kills 50. I think we might be unexperienced here. Like, what gave you that, Einstein? Taking to the field on the 13th of November 1932, the military found a degree of success over the first 2 days, with approximately 40 emus killed. If they killed 50 in the first operation, they're already on a greater success. The third day, 15th of October, proved to be far less successful. By the 2nd of December, the soldiers were killing approximately 100 emus per week. Holy cow. Meredith was recalled on the 10th of December and in his report claimed 986 confirmed kills with about 1,000 rounds per kill. In addition, Meredith claimed exactly 2,500 wounded birds had also died from their injuries. Historian Greg Bayer wrote, "This figure, however, is highly disputed and is likely to be very inflated to try and get, a continuation on the operation." In assessing the success of the cold, an article called The Coolgardie Miner in August of 1935 reported that although the use of machine guns had been criticized in many quarters, the method proved effective and saved what remained of the wheat. So the second one was a lot more successful based on what we just read. However, these operations would not solve the farmers' problems because although it initially helped with the damaged wheat, farmers of the area would once again request military assistance in 1934 and 1943, 1948, only to be turned down by the government time and time again because it wasn't worth the resources they were spending. Instead, the bounty system that had instigated in 1923 was continued, and this proved to be more effective. Over 57,000 bounties were claimed over a 6-month period in 1934, which helped the farmers out significantly. By December 1932, word of Emu War had spread, reaching the United Kingdom. Some conservationists there protested the cull as an extermination of the rare emu. There's only 20,000 of them in that area. The eminent Australian orthodontist. They also responded by building barrier fences to come to a compromise with people who might have been protesting the wars. In November of 1950, Hugh Leslie raised issues of emus in federal parliament and urged Army Minister Josiah Francis to release a quantity of .303 ammunition from the Army to use of the farmers so that the farmers could essentially kill them themselves. This was approved, and the farmers were given over 500,000 rounds of ammunition, thus putting an end to the Emu War. Well, it was put an end to before that. And for people who were protesting this, like, yeah, I know PETA and everybody are going to lose their crap and, oh, they're innocent animals and, oh, let nature be nature. But, like, if you've never woken up, gone into your backyard and had a bird that's the size of you staring at you and destroying your land, and when you try and do anything, it gets aggressive. Until you've had that happen to you, you cannot protest. That's the way I look at it. But then again, yeah, I already know that's going to go down into a rabbit hole of like, well, then you can't protest if this has never happened to you and stuff like that. But emus, especially in packs, is crazy, dude. That's all I'll say about that. But that's the last of the obscure moments from history. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. I had a blasty blast looking this up. And like I said, I still have a Google Doc full of ones that I haven't looked up yet or really dove into at all. So if you'd like to see more episodes like this, let me know. And if there's a particular event that you want me to cover, let me know. Like I said, there's a lot of different ways you can contact us here on the podcast. We have the email, which is zandomthoughts@gmail.com. On Instagram, we are Zandom Thoughts. On X or /Twitter, we are at Zandom Thoughts. Literally wherever you're at on social media, if you type in Zandom Thoughts, other than Facebook at this point, we're pretty much on there. So contact us, let us know, and we will see if we can make that happen. But before we get into it, we've got a segment that we've been waiting on for a little bit. It is time. Let's go. Movie is reviewed and ranked. Number 1, that's right, it took us 4 episodes to get here, but ladies and gents, we finally did it. We finally got a movie I have never seen before that we can officially review and rank. I wonder what number it's gonna fall to. But in case you don't know what it is, movie is reviewed and ranked. It's pretty self-explanatory in name, but essentially I have to find a movie that I've never seen before. It can be from any year. 1993 all the way to here 2025, maybe even before I was born. Just a movie that I've never seen, and then I will give a synopsis of it. And not like go into full detail of it, mainly because the idea of this is to, 1, give me something to rank, because I love ranking lists, but to encourage people to go and watch movies that they've never seen as well, and even encourage me to watch the movies. If you have a movie you want to suggest, you can send it to my email. You can contact me on Instagram. You can contact me on Twitter or /X, whatever you want to call it. There are plenty of ways to contact us, and they're all in the show notes. If you want to suggest a movie, even if I've already seen it, I will give you some thoughts on that movie. But it will not get on the big ranking. So without further ado, we are going to be ranking the movie known as Until Dawn, which is based off the video game of the same name. I had to include that line in there. It's included in all of the movie reviews I ended up watching on YouTube regarding this movie. But essentially, the video game was a horror video game in which you make choices, and the story kind of tailors to all the choices that you make. But you got to be very careful about the choices you make, because there's a thing called the butterfly effect. And pretty much what that is it's a series of choices in which the smallest choice could lead to the death of one of your characters. I don't remember how many characters you have in total. There's like 5, 6, 7, something like that. And your goal is to help them all survive until dawn. Well, since the video game is based off a series of choices, they adapted this property to the movie screen, but they had to add a twist on it so that it was more appropriate in a movie format. And so what they did is, and I don't think I'm spoiling anything because this is literally in every single description that you find about the movie, it is instead a group of friends come upon a mysterious house in the forest, and once they get on the property, they find out they cannot leave. And their goal is to survive until dawn, because creatures, all sorts of horror movie tropish things, come after them and try and kill them. And whenever they're killed, like all of them have to be killed, once they're all killed, the night starts over and they start from where they started, and the night is a new night. Now they have to survive something else. And they end up finding out that they have a limited amount of life, and they are trying all this time through trial and error to survive until dawn. And I won't explain what happens if they die too many times, because it is explained in the plot, but the movie trailer essentially shows, like, the next time they spawn in, their hair's falling out. The next time they spawn in, they sign their name on a little hotel guest book, and every time they sign their name, it gets a little less human, like they're losing themselves. So it's uncertain of what happens to them. Either they're just going to disappear all entirely, get overtaken by the darkness, or they just lose themselves and they're a husk of their former self. But their goal is they have to get out of here before whatever happens. And the first question I will ask about this movie is, did I like it? And the answer isn't as simple as a yes or a no. The answer is more along the lines of, yes, I liked the first half of the movie, and the second half of the movie was not impressive at all. I think it did a very good job of building around this premise they had set for themselves. Essentially, without spoiling anything, surprise, they go to the hotel, and the first night they die, a big slasher killer dude, with a bunch of Easter eggs from some of the characters and creatures from the games. So I definitely enjoyed looking for the Easter eggs as somebody who played the video game and everything. But they die by the slasher dude. Then they wake up and there's another entity trying to kill them. And then they die and there's another entity trying to kill them. And it's a good premise of, oh, not only are they trying to survive, but we're essentially trying to figure out what's going on with them. We don't know what's going to be awaiting them the next night. So it does a good job of building suspense. It does a good job of building this universe. It does a good job with kills. Like, they have a lot of practical effects, so the kills aren't just like, guy swings machete, CGI cuts him in half. No, like, they did a good job of, like, if a guy swings a machete, their head cuts in half. Like, they cut a water balloon or something. Not quite like that. I don't know how all the practical effects work, but the kills looked very cool, is what I will say. And so all of it's going very well until they get about, I want to say, the 60% mark of the movie. And that's where I really get a problem with the movie, mainly because it feels very rushed. With them having to survive night after night after night, there's a certain amount of time they have to survive each night, and so it ends up adding up very quickly. I think if they would have survived the amount of nights that it was set for, it would have been like a 3 or a 4 hour movie. So obviously, for the sake of time constraints, they have to kind of figure out how many nights they're going to do. And they fully invest. They do 13 nights, but their solution to not making a 4 hour movie is instead flashing forward. Meaning they get through the first 4 nights, and then all of a sudden they wake up and it's night 13 and they gotta survive because they're pretty sure they gotta survive. And if they die here, it's over. It's all over. And I know that's somewhat of a mild spoiler, but I don't think it's going to ruin it for you. You still have to watch through the first 4 nights and figure out what the premise is. It's not really a giant plot thing. It's just their way of getting around this thing of, oh, they're dying over and over again. They don't go the route of Happy Death Day, where it's like a string of quick get deaths back to back. They really invest in each night. And unfortunately, the route they took was very nice. It made for a good first half of the movie, but then the flash forward just kind of takes you out of it. And their explanation for the nights is you get like this little montage of various creatures and stuff they had to battle through those nights, because one of the characters just happened to record a bunch of stuff on his phone. So as you're watching a bunch of those clips, which are all in the trailer, by the way, you're getting to see all these creatures. And the thing that took me a little bit out of it is a lot of the creatures that you do get to see, like the full nights for, are kind of generic and honestly not the most interesting characters on the list. The only thing that the camera thing did for me was, man, I really would have liked to see those creatures in the movie. So it kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. I understand there has to be a workaround. You can't have a 4 hour movie. Otherwise, that's going to like quadruple the budget of the movie and everything like that. And realistically, unless you're like a big oracle, a big like set piece like Lord of the Rings or something, no one's probably going to give you that investment of their time anyway. So they did what a lot of movies do out there, and they just kind of rushed through it. It's not ideal, but that's what they did. And the other part that's annoying about that is after it, how do I describe this? Because it's just such an interesting decision to me. Throughout the entire marketing process of this movie, they've very much stressed, although it's linked to Until Dawn, it is a different storyline because we wanted to make it different from the video game so it's more appropriate for the movie screen. Like all the interviews that the directors did, that's kind of the explanation they give. So it confused me when they took the plot of the video game, removed a bunch of the bones from it, and kind of created this giant concoction. And then the first half of this movie was what they explained in the interviews and stuff of, oh, it's its own premise and everything. So you have this deboned video game concept and this new horror movie idea, and you essentially just slam them together. And that's why it ended up being such a messy movie, is because the first half of the movie is completely different from the second half of the movie. And if you do that right for certain movies, that's a pretty big deal. It's pretty entertaining. It's like, oh, you're watching a mystery thriller movie, but this whole time it was actually a horror movie. There's zombies in the vault. Not that that would be a good movie or anything like that, but there are movies out there where genre flips halfway through and it's interesting. This one, I don't even know what to call it. It took me right out of it. I was like, so is it the video game universe or not? Because it's like, oh, it's linked to the video game in property only. And then it just kind of winks at you, and it's like, but not if you watch the second half of this movie. It's going to try and be the video game now. Which isn't the biggest deal in the world, but they adapted the first half of the movie to the big screen, and then, like, I don't know, man. It's very messy, and it's a slow burn on top of that. Not only do they try and adapt to the video game to the second half of the movie, it feels like, but it's a very much a slow burn where, like, it doesn't feel like anything has consequences anymore. They didn't build these characters to be the most interesting. You don't really care about any of them, at least I didn't. So it's like you're almost hoping for them to fail at this point. And by the end of the movie, it just feels like there's no stakes. Like, throughout the entire movie, they're just a bunch of terrified children, essentially, because they can't be more than 25. So they're all very young. And because of the time skip, we don't see what they learn. We don't see how they grow. It's just these same 4 kids that are scared for their lives. And then all of a sudden, the main girl just picks up a weapon and is like, I'm done running. And the movie shifts to its second premise. And it's like, where did this come from? I would have liked to see that if that happened, but it's not believable. Not that horror movies have to be believable, but like, you get what I mean. There's character development, and then there's whatever this slop is. So, like I said, I'm not going to go into it any further without getting spoilers. So, first half of the movie, very decent. Second half of the movie, I got bored. I pulled out my phone a couple times. And for movies, I typically don't like to do that. So, that's a big no-no. It's a big no-no. But since this is the very first MIRAR, where am I going to rank it? It is number 1. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Until Dawn. Don't applaud. Don't you freaking applaud. It didn't deserve it. Yeah, quite down there. Yeah, no, it's number 1 for the first week. And the only way it's going to remain there is if we find a movie that is worse than it, which I'm hoping the movie I've chosen for the second MIRAR is not worse. But in order to figure out what that is, you're going to have to tune in next week. And as for this week, it's time that we started wrapping this episode up. And if you've made it to this point, thank you so much. If you have listened to this point, I imagine you've listened to all the other episodes, which I've explained in my last episode what the upload schedule is going to look like. And lo and behold, right after I say we're uploading on Tuesdays, I completely miss it. And it's because my responsibilities as a dad outweighed my responsibility to this podcast. You can't really blame me for that, but it does really feel like it's not a great feeling whenever you immediately make a commitment and then fail that commitment immediately. But that's the beautiful thing, and that's the positive statement, the positive word of the week, whatever you want to call it, is just because you fail on something doesn't mean you have to hit the reset button, doesn't mean you have to start over. You can pick it right back up where you're at. You still have breath in your lungs. You still are moving forward in life, hopefully. And so just because you fail doesn't mean you can't improve, doesn't mean you can't come back and do it right, doesn't mean you can't continue that journey forward. Even if that failure makes your next step a little bit heavier, you can still pick your foot up and keep on walking. And that it might seem like a small commitment or a small failure in comparison to a lot of failures of life, but there's nothing more truer. If you're in the middle of battling addiction and you fail on your addiction, remember everything you've learned, all the steps, taking your breaths. If you hear a train in the background, that's just my daughter walking across the living room upstairs. She's taking that next step forward, let me tell you. But the reason why I say all that is there's been times in the past wherever I am going through something, whether I'm battling an addiction in my personal life, whether I'm trying to be committed to something and I fail, it feels like I have to go all the way back to step number 1 and restart. I have to rebuild myself up to that point. And you couldn't be further from the truth, because failure is an everyday part of life. And reality, I can't think of too many times where I failed at something and didn't end up learning something that made me better going forward. So just because you fell doesn't mean you can't stand back up. And if you fell in your personal progress, don't start over, stand up and keep going forward. The Bible verse Proverbs 24:16 says, "For the righteous fall 7 times and rise again, but the wicked stumble in times of calamity." And 2 Corinthians 4:9, persecuted but not forsaken, struck down but not destroyed. Just because you fall down, that's not the end. That's not, oh, I have to hit the reset button. That's not, oh, go back to start, or do not pass go, do not collect $200, whatever you want to call it. It is an opportunity to stand back up. It is an opportunity to exercise faith, and it is an exercise to show yourself that you are stronger than you think you are, because reality, most of us are. And so if you've stumbled today, that is okay. That just means you are human, and that means you have an opportunity in front of you. And I just ask you this question as we close the podcast. What are you going to do with that opportunity? Are you going to rise again, or are you going to stay where you're at and sulk? I know which one I hope you choose, and I know which one you are capable of. You've got this. Just like you've made it to the end of this episode. That takes the most resilience ever, listening to my droning voice. But if you did make it to this point in the episode, thank you so much. It really does mean the world to me that people listen to it. My daughter apparently likes listening to my podcast. It's how she falls asleep during nap time, which I will definitely take that. I created a life hack, ladies and gentlemen, so if nothing else, we have that going for us. My daughter Valerie loves my podcast. I'm gonna keep making more episodes now. But we got a big episode coming next week. I'm already working on it. It is the Independence Day special, 4th of July, whatever you want to call it. And it is the Great Presidential Battle Royale. That's where I take every president from history and I'm going to write a giant story. And there can only be one left over. Presidents are going to be eliminated. They're all going to be put on an island and they're just going to interact with each other and beat each other up, kill each other, all that good stuff, which kind of sounds like terrorism to me, but it's going to be a fun time. And I'm still piecing together how the episode's going to come forth, but I know it's going to be a fun one. And if you want to see more of that, hit that subscribe button. We got a lot of projects on the horizon. Follow us on all of the socials. I've already mentioned them a couple times throughout this episode. And in honor of the Mango Mountain Colt, I'm going to leave you with a sip from my Mango Monster. That's right, I went out and got one. Ooh, how's that for a drink review on the podcast? But one last time, thank you guys so much for watching, for listening to this episode of the podcast, and I will hopefully see you in the next one, because I'm watching. Bye.